The ranch was quiet in a way that pressed against a man's chest, not the peaceful kind of quiet people talk about in magazines. This was the kind that made you aware of every breath you took, every creak of old wood, every distant call of an animal in the dark. Ethan Cole had lived with that quiet for so long that he barely noticed it anymore, until nights like this one, when the wind slowed and the stars burned brighter than usual. Ethan stood on the porch of his weather-beaten ranch house, a mug of black coffee warming his hands. The smell of hay, dust, and dry earth hung in the air. Somewhere behind him, the animals settled for the night. The horses shifting their weight, the cattle lowing softly, the barn cat padding across the floor like it owned the place. They were his family now. They had been for years. Ethan was 42, though most people guessed older. Life on the ranch had carved deep lines into his face, burned his skin dark, and hardened his hands into something closer to leather than flesh. His beard carried a few streaks of gray he hadn't bothered to shave. There had been a time when he cared about such things. That time felt like another lifetime. Once this ranch had been loud. There had been laughter in the kitchen, music on the radio, a woman humming while she cooked dinner, barefoot on the cold tile. Ethan pushed that memory away the way he always did, fast and firm, like slamming a door before the wind could tear it open. That life was gone. Now there was only routine. Wake before sunrise, feed the animals, fix whatever broke during the night, work until the sun burned high, then kept working until it sank again. Eat alone, sleep alone, repeat. People in the nearby town used words like loner when they talked about him. Some said he was rude, others said he was broken. Ethan didn't correct them. It was easier to let people believe what they wanted than to explain how silence could feel safer than hope. He turned as a horse whinnied softly from the stable. "I'm coming, boy," Ethan muttered, setting the mug down. Inside the barn, he ran his hand along familiar necks and flanks, murmuring low, steady words. Animals didn't ask questions. They didn't look at you with pity or curiosity. They accepted what you were, and that was enough. Or at least it had been. That night, as Ethan locked the barn and headed back toward the house, headlights appeared at the far end of the dirt road. He froze. Nobody came out here this late. The road was rough, barely marked, and known only to people who had a reason to find the ranch. Ethan's first instinct was annoyance, followed quickly by suspicion. He rested his hand on the fence, watching as the car bumped slowly closer, its lights sweeping across the fields like searching eyes. The engine cut off a few yards from the house. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the driver's door opened. A woman stepped out. She looked out of place immediately, too clean, too careful, like someone who wasn't used to dirt roads or open land. She wore a long coat pulled tight against the cold and boots that were practical but new. Her hair, dark and pulled back, caught the moonlight as she shut the door behind her. Ethan didn't move. "Mr. Cole?" she called, her voice carrying easily across the space between them. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he studied her the way he would a nervous horse, slow, patient, alert for sudden movements. "That depends," he said finally. "Who's asking?" The woman hesitated, then offered a small, polite smile. "My name is Claire Bennett. I'm sorry to show up this late. I didn't mean to intrude." "You did anyway," Ethan replied flatly. She nodded, as if she expected that response. "I did. And I wouldn't have, if it wasn't important." Important was a word people used when they wanted something. Ethan stepped closer, the porch light illuminating his face now. Claire's eyes flicked briefly to his hands, scarred, rough, steady. She swallowed. "You're a hard man to find," she said. "But I was told if anyone could help me, it would be you." "I don't help strangers," Ethan said. "Especially not at night." "I know," Claire replied. "That's what everyone said." That gave him pause. Most people didn't bother with him anymore. The fact that she'd heard about him, really heard, meant she'd been asking questions, digging. That made him uneasy. "What do you want?" he asked. Claire exhaled slowly, like someone bracing herself. "I need a place to stay." Ethan almost laughed. "Almost. You're lost," he said. "Town's 10 miles back the way you came. There's a motel." She shook her head. "I can't stay there. Why not?" She didn't answer right away. Her gaze drifted to the fields, the barn, the dark shapes of animals resting under the stars. "Because I don't need a night," she said quietly. "I need time." Ethan felt something twist in his chest. An old, familiar warning. Time was dangerous. Time led to attachment. Attachment led to loss. "No," he said simply. Claire nodded again, accepting the refusal more easily than he expected. "I thought you might say that." "Then why are you here?" She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. She didn't hand it to him, just held it. "I own a house," she said. "A real one. Warm, solid, empty." Ethan frowned. "Congratulations. It's not near here," she continued. "It's about 2 hours south. I don't want to live in it alone." That caught his attention, whether he liked it or not. "You came all this way," he said slowly, "to offer a stranger your house?" "Yes. That's insane." She smiled faintly. "I've been told that too." Ethan folded his arms. "I don't need a house." "No," Claire agreed. "You have one. What you don't have is someone to share the weight of living." The words hit closer than he expected. "That's not your business," he said sharply. "Maybe not," she replied, "but it could be our arrangement." Ethan stared at her, trying to understand the angle. There was always an angle. "What's the catch?" he asked. Claire's smile faded. "We share—" He waited. "The space," she clarified. "The responsibility. The days." "I'm not asking for charity, Mr. Cole. I'm offering a trade." "For what?" he demanded. "For not being alone," she said honestly. The honesty unsettled him more than any lie would have. Ethan turned away, staring out across the land he'd bled for, sweated over, survived on. This ranch was his shield, his excuse, his isolation made visible. "I don't live well with people," he said. "I don't either," Claire answered. Silence stretched between them, thick and heavy. Ethan finally looked back at her. "You don't even know me." "I know enough," she said. "I know you stayed when everyone else left. I know you built a life out of what remained, and I know you're tired." He didn't deny it. "You can say no," Claire added softly. "I'll turn around and leave. But I had to ask." Ethan thought of the empty nights, the conversations he never had, the way the quiet sometimes felt like it was closing in. "Only if we share," she had said. That was the part that frightened him most. "Go back to your car," he said at last. Claire's shoulders slumped. She nodded. "I understand. Stay the night," he continued. "Barn's warm. House is—" "Fine. In the morning you leave." Her eyes widened. "You're sure?" "No," Ethan said, "but it's late." A slow smile spread across her face. Careful, grateful, restrained. "Thank you." As Claire walked toward the house, Ethan felt a strange, unfamiliar tension settle in his chest. He didn't know it yet, but the quiet he'd built his life around was already beginning to crack. And once it did, nothing would ever be the same. Morning came quietly to the ranch, not with alarm clocks or traffic noise, but with the soft sound of hooves shifting in the dirt and the low, patient breathing of animals waiting to be fed. Ethan woke before the sun, the way he always did. For a brief moment he lay still, staring at the ceiling, his end empty. Then he remembered. There was someone else here. The realization hit him like a stone dropped into still water, sending ripples of unease through his chest. He sat up slowly, listening. The house was silent, too silent. No footsteps, no clatter of dishes, no unfamiliar sounds. He pulled on his boots and stepped outside. The sky was just beginning to lighten, painted in soft blues and pale orange. Dew clung to the grass, soaking the hems of his jeans as he crossed the yard toward the barn. The animals greeted him as usual, unaware that anything in his world had shifted. That steadiness calmed him. Inside the barn, Ethan moved through his routine with practiced ease. He shoveled feed, checked water, ran his hand along the flank of his oldest horse, Boone. Boone leaned into the touch, warm and solid. "Easy, boy," Ethan murmured. "Same as always." But it wasn't. When he stepped back into the yard, he saw Claire standing near the fence watching the sunrise. She had changed clothes. Simple jeans, a faded sweater that looked borrowed, boots dusted with dirt. Her hair was loose now, falling around her shoulders, catching the early light. She looked less like a visitor, and more like someone who belonged there, and that unsettled him more than it should have. "You're up early," Ethan said, his voice rough. Claire turned, startled slightly. "I didn't want to sleep late. It didn't feel right." Most people would have taken advantage of the warmth, the quiet, the unexpected shelter. Her restraint earned her a point she hadn't asked for. "There's coffee," he said. "If you drink it black—" "I do," she replied. "Thank you." They walked back toward the house, a few steps apart, the silence between them thick but not hostile. Inside, the kitchen smelled faintly of wood and old mornings. Ethan poured 2 mugs without asking and slid one across the table. Claire wrapped her hands around it like it was something precious. For a while, neither of them spoke. Ethan wasn't uncomfortable with silence. He lived in it. But this silence felt different, charged, waiting. "You said you'd leave this morning," he finally said. Claire nodded. "I will, unless you change your mind. I didn't think you would," she said gently. That gentleness scraped at something inside him. "Why me?" Ethan asked suddenly. "You could have gone anywhere. Why this ranch? Why a man you don't know?" Claire stared into her coffee, the steam curling up between them. When she spoke, her voice was quieter. "Because I know what it looks like when someone builds a life to keep pain out," she said. "And I recognized it here." Ethan's jaw tightened. "You don't know anything about my pain." "No," she agreed, "but I know my own." He waited. "I lost someone," Claire continued. "Not to death. Sometimes that would have been easier. I lost them to distance, to choices, to silence." The words settled between them, heavy and unfinished. "I bought that house after," she went on. "Thought a fresh start would fix things. But the walls felt too big, the nights too long. So you decided to fill them with a stranger," Ethan said. She looked up at him then. "I decided not to be alone anymore." He scoffed softly. "That's a dangerous decision." "Yes," she said, "but loneliness is dangerous too." Ethan pushed his chair back and stood. "You should eat beef. Or you go." She smiled, small and grateful. "I will." They spent the morning working side by side, though Ethan hadn't asked for help. Claire followed him anyway, learning, watching, staying out of the way. She carried buckets, opened gates, listened more than she spoke. She wasn't useless. By midday, the sun was high and the work slowed. Claire wiped sweat from her forehead, laughing quietly at herself. "I'm terrible at this," she admitted. "You're learning," Ethan replied before he could stop himself. The word surprised them both. She hesitated near the truck, keys in hand. "Ethan, about what I said last night." "I know," he said. "You don't have to decide now." He studied her face. Tired, but steady. Hopeful, but not desperate. "Stay another night," he said. Her breath caught. "Are you sure?" "No," he said again. "But I'm thinking, that night they ate dinner together. Simple food, quiet conversation, the kind that felt almost normal. Later, as the fire crackled low, Claire spoke again. "If we did this," she said carefully, "it wouldn't be pretending. I'm not asking you to play a role." "What are you asking?" he asked. "Honesty," she said, "and effort. That's all." Ethan stared into the fire, memories flickering there, faces, voices, promises broken by time. "I don't promise well," he said. "Then don't promise," Claire replied. "Just show up." Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows softly. Ethan realized something then, something that scared him more than loneliness ever had. For the first time in years, he could imagine a different life, and that meant he could lose it. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. "If we share, it won. Be easy." Claire met his gaze. "I didn't come here for easy." They sat there, 2 people balanced on the edge of a choice that would change everything. Neither of them knew yet how much it would cost, or how much it might save them. "जब तुम लिखोगे part 3, अगले हिस्से में, Claire के past का deeper secret, Ethan के old wounds का real trigger और एक ऐसा moment जो उनके arrangement को खतरे में डाल देगा। बस कहो, part 3, बिल्कुल। अब कहानी असल टकराव, conflict की तरफ जा रही है। ये रहा part 3, ज्यादा गहरा, ज्यादा जज्बाती और आखिर में ऐसा मोड़ जो सब कुछ हिला दे। Part 3. The first real argument came on a Tuesday. It didn't start loud. It didn't start angry. It started the way most dangerous things do, quiet, reasonable, and full of good intentions. Ethan was in the barn repairing a broken hinge when he noticed Claire standing too close to the paddock fence. Boone shifted uneasily, ears flicking back. The horse had always been gentle, but he didn't like sudden movements. "Step back," Ethan said sharply. Claire turned, startled. "I was just..." "Step back," he repeated, louder this time. She did, immediately her face flushing with embarrassment. Boone relaxed, lowering his head again. The moment passed, but something else lingered in the airtight, uncomfortable. "I did." "No," she said quietly. "I told you yesterday," Ethan replied, not looking at her. "You don't stand there." "I forgot," she said. "I'm still learning." He wiped grease from his hands, irritation crawling up his spine. "Forgetting gets people hurt out here." Claire crossed her arms, more defensive than angry. "I said I was sorry." Ethan sighed, the sound heavy. "I know, just listen next time." She nodded, but the hurt in her eyes didn't disappear. That night, the house felt smaller. They ate dinner in near silence. The fire crackled, but it didn't warm the space between them. Claire washed her plate and set it carefully in the sink. "I feel like I'm walking on glass," she said softly, her back still turned. Ethan stiffened. "This isn't a city apartment. This place doesn't forgive mistakes." "I understand that," she said. "What I don't understand is why you talk to the animals with more patience than you talk to me." The words landed harder than she intended. Ethan's jaw tightened. "Animals don't bring history with them." Claire turned then, really looking at him. "And you think I do?" "Yes," he said, too quickly. The room went quiet again, but this time the silence was sharp. "I never asked you to fix me," Claire said after a moment. "I asked to share space. That's all. And I gave you space," Ethan snapped. "You gave me shelter," she replied. "Not space." He looked away. Later that night, Ethan lay awake, staring at the dark ceiling. The argument replayed in his head, each word sharper than the last. He hadn't meant to snap. He just didn't know how to let someone close without bracing for impact. Claire lay awake too, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the house settling around her. She wondered if she had made a mistake coming here. Wondered if loneliness had pushed her into another version of the same life she'd tried to escape. Morning came anyway. A few days later, a truck pulled into the yard. Ethan recognized it instantly. His shoulders went rigid. The truck belonged to Mark Dalton, neighbor, rancher, and the closest thing Ethan had to a connection beyond his animals. Mark climbed out, tall and broad, his face breaking into a grin when he saw Ethan. "Been a while," Mark said. "Thought you'd finally disappeared." "Still here," Ethan replied. Then Mark noticed Claire standing on the porch. "Well," he said slowly, eyebrows lifting. "That's new." Claire stepped forward, offering a polite smile. "Hi, I'm Claire." Mark shook her hand, his curiosity obvious. Didn't think Ethan let people live this close to his orbit. Ethan shot him a look. "What do you want, Mark?" "Straight to business," Mark chuckled. "County's reassessing land values. Thought you'd want a heads up." They talked shop for a few minutes, but Mark's gaze kept drifting back to Claire. Finally, when Ethan went to fetch paperwork, Mark leaned closer to her. "You should know," he said quietly. "He wasn't always like this." Claire hesitated. "Like what?" "Closed," Mark said. "Hard." Ethan returned before she could ask more. That night, Claire asked the question anyway. "What happened to your wife?" she said softly. The air in the room changed instantly. Ethan didn't answer. "I'm not asking to hurt you," she added. I don't want to keep guessing." He stared into the fire for a long time before speaking. "Her name was Lily," he said finally. "She hated the quiet at first. Said it made her feel invisible." Claire listened, heart tight. She wanted more people, more noise, more life, Ethan continued. "I wanted this, the land, the animals. I thought love meant compromise." He swallowed. "It wasn't enough." "She left?" Claire asked gently. "She stayed," Ethan replied, "until she didn't." Iyer waited. "She drove into town one night," he said. "Didn't come back." Claire's breath caught. "Ethan, I'm so sorry." He nodded once. "That's why I don't promise. That's why I don't share easily. People leave." The truth settled between them, heavy and raw. A week later, the past knocked louder. A woman arrived in a rental car, heels sinking into the dirt. She looked expensive and out of place. Claire watched from the porch as Ethan's face drained of color. "Ethan," the woman said, "we need to talk." Claire felt something twist in her chest. "Who is that?" she asked later. Ethan didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was flat. "My sister." The argument that followed was louder than the first. "She wants to sell," Ethan told Claire that night. "The ranch. Says it's time." "And what do you want?" Claire asked. "I want to be left alone." Claire stood, pacing. "You can't keep running from everything that hurts you." "That's rich," Ethan snapped. You came here because you were running." The words hit their mark. Claire went very still. "You don't know why I left. Then tell me," Ethan said. She hesitated, then spoke. "I was engaged," she said. "He didn't hit me. He didn't yell. He just decided my life for me." Ethan's anger faltered. "He controlled everything," she continued. "Where we lived, who I saw, when I spoke. I left because I was disappearing." Silence fell again. "So when you pull away," Claire said, voice trembling, "it feels familiar. And I won't live like that again." Ethan looked at her, really looked, and realized something terrifying. He wasn't just protecting himself. He was hurting her. That night, Claire packed a small bag. "I'm not leaving yet," she said quietly, "but I need to know this isn't a mistake." Ethan watched her walk toward the guest room, fear settling deep in his chest. For the first time since Lily, the idea of losing someone didn't feel inevitable. It felt unbearable, and outside the ranch stood silent, holding its breath. The ranch had never felt so loud, not with noise but with things unsaid. Every step Ethan took across the yard felt heavier than the last. The animals moved around him as they always did, steady and predictable, but something inside him was off balance. Claire was still here, but she wasn't with him. She kept to herself that morning, finishing chores without asking, without lingering. There was a politeness to her distance that scared him more than anger ever could. Anger meant someone still cared enough to fight. This felt like preparation. Ethan watched her from the barn doorway as she loaded hay into the feeder. She moved with quiet efficiency now, no longer tentative. She had learned the rhythms of the ranch faster than he expected. Too fast. "You don't have to do that," he said. Claire didn't look up. "It needs to be done. I can handle it." "I know," she replied. "But I'm still here. I'll pull my weight." The words stung, not because they were rude, but because they sounded temporary. That afternoon, Ethan's sister Margaret returned. She didn't announce herself. She never did. Her car rolled up the drive like it owned the place, dust rising behind it. Ethan felt his chest tighten as soon as he saw her. Margaret stepped out, sunglasses on, phone already in hand. She glanced around the ranch with thinly veiled judgment. "You look tired," she said by way of greeting. "I'm busy," Ethan replied. She noticed Claire then, standing near the fence. Margaret's gaze sharpened. "And who is this?" Claire stepped forward before Ethan could answer. "I'm Claire." Margaret smiled politely, the kind of smile that never reached the eyes. "Friend?" Ethan hesitated a fraction too long. "She's staying here." Margaret raised an eyebrow. "Since when do you let people stay?" "Since now," Margaret scoffed softly. "Ethan, we need to talk, alone." Claire started to step back, but Ethan surprised himself by saying, "She can hear." That stopped Margaret cold. "This concerns family business. She's part of my life right now," Ethan said. His voice wasn't loud, but it was firm. Claire looked at him, something fragile flickering in her eyes. Margaret sighed. "Fine. Then you should both know. The county's offer stands. They want the land. Developers are circling. This ranch is worth more than you realize." "I'm not selling," Ethan said. "You can't keep pretending this place is saving you," Margaret shot back. "You're alone out here, clinging to ghosts." Claire flinched at the word. Ethan stepped closer. "Leave." Margaret's expression hardened. "Think about it. This isn't just your past, it's your future." She left without another word. That night, Claire didn't come to dinner. Ethan sat at the table, staring at the empty chair across from him. The food grew cold. The house felt hollow again. He found Claire in the guest room, folding clothes with careful precision. "You don't have to leave," he said. She paused. "I'm not leaving tonight. But you're packing." "Yes." The honesty cut deep. "I told you I wouldn't disappear without saying anything," Claire continued. "I meant that." Ethan ran a hand through his hair. "What do you need from me?" She finally looked at him. "I need to know you won't shut me out every time things get hard." "I don't know how not to," he admitted. "That's the truth," she said softly. "But it's not enough." They stood there, inches apart, the weight of everything pressing down on them. "I'm scared," Ethan said quietly. "If I let you in, and you leave," Claire's voice trembled, "and if I stay, and you never really let me in." The words hung between them, heavy and unanswerable. That night, a storm rolled in. Thunder cracked across the sky, sharp and sudden. Rain hammered the roof. the sound echoing through the house. One of the horses spooked, breaking loose from the paddock. Ethan was out the door before he realized what he was doing. "Ethan!" Claire called after him. He didn't stop. The rain soaked him through as he reached the paddock, heart pounding. Boone reared, panicked, slipping in the mud. "Easy!" Ethan shouted, fighting the storm. Claire arrived seconds later, breathless, grabbing the gate. "Tell me what to do." "Stay back!" Ethan yelled. "No!" she shouted back. "You don't get to push me away right now." For a moment, time slowed. Ethan saw it then, not fear in her eyes, but determination. She wasn't running. She was choosing to stand. "Hold the gate," he said. She did. Together, they calmed the horse, hands steady, voices low. Rain poured down their faces as Boone finally settled, trembling but safe. When it was over, they stood there, soaked and shaking. "You could have been hurt," Ethan said, "Hoa. Sally." "So could you," Claire replied. "That's what sharing looks like." The words hit him harder than the storm. Back inside, wrapped in blankets, the house felt different. Warmer, real. "I don't want to sell," Ethan said suddenly. "Not the land. Not this." Claire watched him carefully. "Then don't sell yourself short either." He met her gaze. "Stay. Not as a request, as a choice." Claire exhaled, tears slipping free. "I'm staying," she said, "but not if I'm alone in it." "You won't be, Ethan. Promised." And this time, it wasn't a promise he made lightly. Outside, the storm began to pass, but the biggest change had already happened, inside the quiet walls of the ranch. For the first time, Ethan wasn't hiding. He was standing still, and letting someone stand beside him. The morning after the storm felt different. The air was clean, washed thin by rain, and the sky stretched wide in pale blue over the ranch. Sunlight spilled across the fields like it was touching the land for the first time. Ethan stood on the porch, breathing it in, realizing something quietly profound. He wasn't bracing himself anymore. For years, every morning had begun with armor, routine as protection, silence as safety. But now, when he heard footsteps behind him, his shoulders didn't tense. Claire joined him, 2 mugs in hand. "Coffee," she said. He took it. Their fingers brushed, brief and warm, and neither of them pulled away too quickly. They stood together without speaking, watching Boone graze peacefully in the distance. "I didn't sleep much," Claire admitted. "Me neither," Ethan said, "but not for bad reasons." She smiled at that. Later that day, the decision Ethan had avoiding finally arrived in full. Margaret returned, this time with papers. She laid them out on the kitchen table like weapons disguised as opportunity. "The offer's good," she said. "Enough to walk away clean. You could start over somewhere else." Ethan looked at the papers, then at the house, the worn floorboards, the small cracks in the wall he'd meant to fix for years, the kitchen where silence had once ruled. Claire stood near the doorway, not interfering, not pushing, just present. "I already started over," Ethan said quietly. Margaret scoffed. "With a stranger? With a choice," he replied. Margaret's voice softened, just slightly. "You're afraid of being hurt again." "Yes," Ethan said, "but I'm more afraid of becoming someone who never tries." Margaret studied him for a long moment, then exhaled. "You sound different." "I am." She gathered the papers. "Then I hope you're right." When she left, the ranch felt like it exhaled too. That evening, Claire sat on the fence as the sun dipped low. "What happens now?" she asked. Ethan joined her. "If you still want the arrangement, we define it. Together, no conditions that trap us," she said. "No silence that shuts us out," he replied. They shook on it, smiling softly at the simplicity of it. Weeks passed. Life didn't turn perfect. They argued sometimes. They misread each other. Old habits surfaced. But something had changed at the core. When things went wrong, neither of them ran. Claire made the house warmer, not by changing it, but by inhabiting it. Laughter returned in small doses. Music played softly in the evenings. She planted flowers near the porch, stubborn little things that survived wind and dust. Ethan found himself talking more, not just about chores or weather, but about Lily, about the grief he'd buried under years of work. Claire listened without trying to fix him. One night, sitting under a sky full of stars, she finally told him the rest of her story, about the moment she realized she was disappearing, about leaving with only a suitcase and shaking hands, about the fear of trusting herself again. "I didn't come here to be saved," she said. I came here to be real. You are, Ethan replied. With me. The county never came back with another offer. The ranch stayed. So did they. Months later, a neighbor stopped by and laughed when he saw the porch light on. The sound of voices inside. Never thought I'd see this place alive again, he said. Ethan glanced at Claire through the window, her laughter bright and unguarded. Neither did I, he replied. On a quiet evening, as the sun bled gold across the fields, Ethan turned to her. You know, he said, I thought sharing meant losing something. Claire smiled. And it means carrying less, he said. She leaned her head against his shoulder. The ranch was still quiet, but it was no longer empty. And for the first time in a long time, Ethan knew this wasn't an ending. It was a beginning he chose. A year later, the ranch looked the same. That was the first thing people noticed when they drove up the long dirt road. The same weathered fence, the same barn leaning just slightly to the left, the same wide fields stretching toward the horizon. From the outside, nothing dramatic had changed. But Ethan knew better. Change didn't always announce itself. Sometimes it settled in quietly, like dust after a long drive, covering everything in a way that only those who lived there could feel. The porch light was on again tonight. That alone still surprised him. Ethan leaned against the railing, watching the last of the daylight fade. The air smelled like cut grass and warm earth. Somewhere behind him, the sound of dishes clinked softly. Claire was humming, not loudly, just enough to be heard if someone was listening. He smiled to himself. Once the quiet had been a shield. Now it was a shared space, something that belonged to both of them, not something that kept the world out. You were thinking again, Claire said, stepping onto the porch with 2 glasses of iced tea. Is it that obvious? Yes, she said, handing him a glass. You get that faraway look. He took a sip. I was thinking about how close I came to selling all this. She followed his gaze across the land, and how close I came to leaving. They stood side by side, shoulders touching. It still felt new sometimes. This ease, this permission to lean without fear. You ever regret it? Ethan asked. Choosing this? Claire considered the question seriously. No, I regret the years I thought being alone was the same as being safe. Ethan nodded. He understood that now. Later that evening, a truck pulled into the driveway. Ethan stiffened automatically, then relaxed when he recognized it. Mark stepped out, waving. Brought you something, he called. Mark handed Ethan a small wooden sign he'd carved himself. The words were simple. Cole Ranch. Est. Still standing. Claire laughed when she saw it. That's perfect. Mark glanced between them, shaking his head. Never thought I'd see you like this, Ethan. Like what? Happy, Mark said plainly. Ethan didn't argue. After Mark left, Claire nailed the sign near the barn door. It wasn't flashy. It didn't need to be. That night, they sat at the kitchen table, paperwork spread out between them, not sale documents this time, but plans, repairs, a small guest room conversion, maybe even weekend riding lessons for local kids. You're really doing this, Claire said softly. We are, Ethan corrected. She looked at him the way she always did when he said things like that, like she was still amazed he meant it. Later, as they prepared for bed, Claire paused in the doorway. You know, she said, when I first came here, I thought the condition was sharing a house. Ethan raised an eyebrow. And now I know it was sharing the hard parts, she said. The fear, the past, the silence. He crossed the room and took her hands. Thank you for not giving up on me. She squeezed his fingers. Thank you for letting me stay. Outside, the ranch settled into its familiar nighttime rhythm. Crickets whined through grass, the low, comforting sounds of animals at rest. The quiet was still there, but it no longer pressed against Ethan's chest. It held him instead, and as the porch light glowed softly against the dark, one thing was certain. The ranch wasn't just a place to survive anymore. It was a place where 2 people chose, every day, to stay.